This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks very much for joining me. I'm proud to bring you a conversation with not one but two musicians from the United States. You'll be hearing from Mark Dunn and Dave Coutts. Now Dave Coutts is a longtime friend of the show's. He's been featured before, and if you don't know, as well hopefully you should, he was the singer that Stone Temple Pilots drafted in when Scott Weiland first went off the rails, God rest the man's soul. Talk Show was the name of the collective that released an album back in 1997. It's one of my personal faves. It has long been, and when Golden Robot released some singles from Dave a few years back now, if you can believe, and they put out the presser that he was available for a chat, I grasped the opportunity, and it's been great to exchange messages and get to know Dave ever since. Mark Dunn is one of those guitarists that is at the top of his game. Now, he's worked with a whole bunch of musicians who he mentions and producers who he mentions in the chat, so I won't do it here, but go across to markdunnguitar.com if you're interested in reading about his extensive bio. The catalyst for the chat with Mark is due to the launch of a new album or EP from him. It is titled Top Gear, and it is indeed top stuff. See what I did there? All right, before we get into the chat, I'm going to give you a sample of the music from the two gentlemen. First of all, you're going to hear Saturday from Dave, and that'll be followed by Drop D for E from Mark. That's for all you people listening via the podcast apps. By the way, YouTube, you get it. I can't play music, otherwise I get a copyright strike. So either way, let's get stuck into it. Here we go. G'day, Mark. How are you, mate?
I'm pretty good, man. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And there he is in the background there. How are you, Dave?
How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing very well, mate. Yeah, it's a sprightly.
Happy to hear you.
Yeah, it's getting a bit colder in our part of the world, which is a bit of a joke, really, I suppose, because I guess it's like Southern California, where the coldest it gets is about 18 degrees. I don't know what that translates into Fahrenheit, but yeah, it's not cold. But yeah, we're in our colder months now.
You're going into winter. We're going into summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But it's always
Where
nice
are
to have
you?
a change. Obviously in Australia, but in Queensland on the Gold Coast.
Gotcha.
Which is probably similar to Florida, I would imagine. I think it's the equivalent to Florida or maybe Southern California, although I think Southern California is more like Sydney. Where I am, it's more tropical.
Nice. I like tropics.
Yeah, it's just the heat gets you after a while.
I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I want to tell you, not because you're taking the time to talk to me, but they're great.
Oh,
you really
fantastic.
ask some questions that people like me want to hear, and I appreciate that. And
Okay,
I
that's
must
really good.
I must applaud you, not because I'm sitting next to Dave, but of course I listened to the podcast with him, and then I also listened to the podcast with Dean. And I just loved how you just stopped him on the train tracks when you're like, Talk Show is one of the best records you've ever done. And I'm like, yes. It was so funny, dude. It was great. Good job. So
thanks,
good.
mate.
So good.
Yeah. I think it had to be done. One of the things that I don't like, and as a lifelong music fan, I've noticed that all of these really prominent artists, you talk about Judas Priest and Rob Halford and Ozzy, they disown parts of their catalogue, and I don't understand why they do that.
Why? Why would you do that?
No, I don't know.
David and I were just having this discussion the other day. I mean, I'm not like the world's busiest session guitar player, but there's records I've played on that were not my works that I probably won't tell anybody about. But at the same time, if you create music and you release it to the world, why wouldn't you be proud of it? That's a wonderful album in spite of what they may want to treat it like. It's just, I don't know why they don't own up to it.
No, I don't know. It wasn't even a commercial failure. They didn't put any money behind it. The label decided that they wanted Scott back in the band clearly when that album was released. But that album was an extension of where they were headed with Core and then Purple and then Tiny Music, and that was a logical conclusion of that journey, musical journey.
It was the fourth album.
Yeah, it was the fourth album, because if you listen to their albums afterwards, it sounds nothing like those. I'm not going to call them the first four albums because that's what they are, and they was a huge part of that. And I don't know why they don't give it the the treatment, so to speak. Re-release it, remaster it, get Dave in to do some liner notes, all this sort of stuff. They've got enough money to be able to do something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's probably going to be inevitable. That's going to happen, and it's going to be precipitated not by them.
Oh, great. Okay, well, that's great to hear. That's fantastic.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
And yeah, that's just great. So, and I hope that.
Hey, I'm here to help.
Of course you are. You should get some. Well, it's very common though in this world for in the music industry for whoever is at the head of the band. And I know in Dean's case and Robert's case it's a bit different because they certainly have written the music, but usually it's a singer or what have you, and they have had bloody nothing to do with the actual songwriting process. They just added lyrics and a few melodies after the fact. They can't play guitar or keyboards or arrange, and they're the ones that are at the head of the table when it comes to the reimagining process. And a whole new bunch of fans come into a situation. They think that this individual is the one that, like the Aussie thing, he couldn't write a song to save his life, let's face it. Okay, he needs the musicians around him, but these fans form these views that the person who is still in the band is the person that wrote them 20, 30, 40 years ago, whatever it might have been. But yeah, that's just the way of the world. There's no point in getting my knickers in a knot over that stuff, eh?
Have you had a chance to listen to the record?
I do, mate. I like it a lot. I was going to say, yeah. You've definitely got to. Well, I'm a musician. I'm a guitarist. So first of all, you're the sort of guitarist that makes me want to stop playing guitar.
That's what I told you.
But thank you, but don't stop.
No, I'm a career bassist, I should say. I play guitar just if I have to. Put it that way. It's a means to an end more often than not. But yeah, I love what you're doing, mate. One of my all-time albums is Jake E. Lee's A Fine Pink Mist, and I think yours has got a lot of parallels. What you're doing there has got a lot of parallels to that. Yeah, I do. I feel that way. I'm
gonna have to go back and revisit that. Thank you. That's very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's that's a very misunderstood solo album from Jake, I think, because of course it's a bit like yours. It's almost all instrumental. But it's very creative and it's a bit abstract too, and I think it needs to have that.
He's one of the most underrated guitar players out there, and it's a shame because he deserves his day. You know, he's deserved his day for a while, actually. Yeah.
No, I agree, but Mark, just since we're talking about the album and your performance there, can you tell me about your musical background?
I started playing guitar when I was 6, so about 20 years ago. And it just wasn't a thing. Like it's not like it was formal. I'm the youngest of 5 boys, so there was guitars in various states of disrepair laying around the house, and so it wasn't a thing, you know. And I learned how to play by listening to Elvis songs, that kind of thing. Yeah, you know. And then it was, like I said, when I say it wasn't a thing, and what I mean by that is like it wasn't like taking formal piano lessons. You know, where some of my friends had to spend a half hour every day taking piano lessons, which is great, but they didn't appreciate it because they were being forced to. So I didn't really feel that way. It just was, and I didn't realize there was a difference in someone's ability to play an instrument until I saw a live Van Halen video. And then I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. That's
different, you know? And so then I thought that that's something that I really wanted to explore. So I'd say about 11 years old on, I started, you know, sneaking, playing my brother's electrics and listening to that stuff and really appreciating that type of music. And also just, you know, listening to, with that band in particular, listen to the quality of their songs while Eddie's just playing lights out stuff, you know, because it's that first record is essentially a pop album. If you took away the guitar solos, they would still be great songs, right? You know?
Yeah.
So that album was so influential on me as someone that listened to guitar music because it brought it, for me, it fomented incredible melodic content with just this acrobatic ability to play the instrument, you know? Yeah. And so of course, I ate, slept, breathed Van Halen, while my other friends were starting to listen to Metallica. And but at the same time, I should tell you that my first concert was September 26, 1979, was the Bee Gees. And that was the moment where I went, that looks like a good job. So I kind of was on my path after that. I just didn't know what it would be. And all through high school, I played every day, man. I just played every day. And I would come home. It got to the point where I had to finish homework before I could touch my guitar, because it was just, it's obsession. And right out of high school, I got a gig playing on a nightly tour, like a cruise ship out of Norfolk. Because the East Coast, where I grew up, is a water town. And Norfolk is. And I had to play everything in one night, from Separate Ways by Journey to Girl from Ipanema, jazz standard, and read charts. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. It was just one of those things that you just did, And so I, from there, started playing in clubs, underage. Here the drinking age is 21. I don't know what it is in Australia. Yeah, but and then started making a name. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I started doing a lot of fly dates, doing the music of Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd with symphonies around the country. Okay. It's called Windborne. And Randy Jackson, remember the band Zebra? Who's Behind the Door? Yeah, he was the singer. He still is. He's and then I moved to Atlanta and spent 11 years down there and started playing in country music because it was still kind of rock and roll, and that was what was paying. And I started developing actual country chops as opposed to rock country chops, and really expanded, my kind of how I looked at guitar and music in general, and then started doing more sessions and playing with more people and doing more pop-up gigs. And so that's kind of a synopsis, a reader's, a smaller version of my journey, but that's kind of what I've been doing. I moved back to Virginia about 12 years ago, and doing the same thing, teaching, writing tunes, doing sessions, hired gun, playing with different artists, tour with a bunch of people out of Nashville, not big names, but on the way up kind of people, doing radio tours and shows. It's when you get into that realm, it's obviously you have to be a capable player, but in the higher end of the business, the main thing is just not be a dummy and not be, you have to be punctual, and you have to be a nice person, and you have to know your role, and so I think my reputation got around for knowing my role and being able to be punctual and not high and not drunk and doing my job. Yeah.
That's such a great point. I played on Saturday night, and somebody asked me a question about why there's not a lot of younger people coming through in the local cover scene around here in southeast Queensland. And so, look, I've got no idea, but I tell you what, I can bet you bottom dollar that they can sit in their bedrooms and shred their asses off. But I said what they can't do is they can't turn up on time. They can't offer to buy a round of drinks before we go on stage. They can't roll up a bloody cable at the end of the night when it's 3:30 in the morning after you're basically exhausted. They can't help lift a PA into the back of a truck. You know what I'm saying? These are the skills. Like the actual playing side of it, yeah, you've got to have that. That's the platform. That's a given. But it's this whole other skill set. Learning songs in your own time and turning up well rehearsed and just being a good bloke that you can't teach.
Well, a real band is a family. And I mean, if you're doing that in a group situation, whether it's a cover band or an original band or whatever, the roles are often unspoken. You see a lot of the Facebook memes about, load in by a band and, singer shows up with nothing, that kind of thing. Singer's the first one to leave. And while there might be some truth to that, if there's a functioning band going on, everybody knows their roles, and you get called out for not doing it, and starting with your performance, and starting with being prepared, and starting with, entertaining. You can't just, everybody's definition of entertainment is different, but honestly, that was the hardest thing that's the hardest thing I ever had to learn, there was one night, and it put me into a depression for a while, actually. But it was walking on stage. You know, that whole thing about when you're a kid and you see the lights go down. Who's your favorite band, Andrew? Who's your favorite band?
Oh gosh, let me go with
when you were a kid.
Yeah, okay. It would have been Faith No More or Megadeth, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay, so the lights go down and the dude's walking the band on, and you're just in the audience. You see the flashlight and all that shit, and you're like, I want to do that. I want to be that person being escorted on stage. So, you know, that feeling you get like this, they're the coolest thing in the world. So I had this epiphany one night when I was being led on stage with a flashlight, playing with a country artist, and you know, there's 5,000 or 6,000 people in the room, and I was like, I'm no longer a musician. I'm an entertainer. And it took me a while to reconcile that, because you spend thousands of hours learning how to do, you know, all that. And then what matters is that you, in that particular moment in time, what matters is that your ass looks good in your jeans, and you're in the right spot for the lighting cue, and you smile at the right time. And, you know, it's like, oh my God. So that, I don't know why I got on that tangent, but that was, to me, being a hired gun was kind of the hardest thing, you know, like that aspect of, it wasn't fake, but it's also not what I signed up for. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah. I just was having these thoughts in the last 48 hours about even what I do as a covers musician. No, it's nowhere near the level that you've just articulated, but it's still at a point where the music side of it and being able to play, it's part of a much bigger picture, if you like, and it all gets rolled into the performance and how you approach it. It's even beyond being a professional. That's also a given. It's your attitude, isn't it? And it's your attitude to wanting to put on something, I often call us the soundtrack to people's drinking when we're playing covers. Okay.
We're selling whiskey and nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're people's Saturday night into Friday and Saturday night, and sometimes Sunday afternoon entertainment. And they don't want to hear. They just want to hear cool music. They just want to be taken away for 3-4 hours, whatever it might be. That's usually how long the
You're right. I'm a musician, and I feel that way when I go see a band. You know, I'm just like, this is cool. I don't have to do anything except enjoy these people. You know, so I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. We've all got a role to play when you walk into a venue. There's no doubt about that. You know. So
what kind of stuff does what does your cover band do?
God, I was playing Lizzo and Dua Lipa the other night, so there you go. So that's where we're at. I mean, we're at that point, but yeah.
And your favorite band, COC?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
I'm not laughing. I promise I'm not laughing.
I honestly, mate, I'm when I say I'm immune to it these days, nothing surprises me. I played everything from Bee Gees to Beatles to Dua Lipa to. We play the John Bon Jovi stuff from the Blaze of Glory soundtrack as well. So, and you do all that in one night, because you get groups of people coming in. So one pub might close, and then you get like a horde of 20 or 30 girls come in, Dua Lipa. But then they go, and then you've got the Rock Pigs in front of you, and then you've got to do Blaze of Glory or whatever it might be.
Song, Jeff Beck on that song. So that's a good song.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know that. There you go. Yeah.
It's a solo on that. And speaking of Bon Jovi, I ran into Bon Jovi's guitar player the other night.
Wait, is that why Richie quit?
What?
If Jeff Beck took the solo?
That was not a Bon Jovi album. It was a Bon Jovi album.
Ooh.
But John Shanks, I ran into John Shanks, and he's playing quote unquote rhythm guitar with Bon Jovi now, along with Phil X. But John Shanks produced the last Van Halen record. So,
oh really?
Yeah, he produced Different Kind of Truth. So I went up to him and I said, "Hey man," he goes, "Hey," I said, "I'm Mark Dunn. I'm from Virginia Beach." I said, "Thanks for producing the final record for my favorite band." He goes, "Oh yeah, dude." I was like, "Tell me a little bit about it." So, but I'll talk to you about what he said, but I won't talk about it while you're recording.
You know who Michael Landau is, right?
Say that again, mate. Sorry.
You know who Michael Landau is?
I've heard the name, so go for it.
He's a guitar player, insane, and he plays chords that I've never even thought of. And he doesn't stop playing those chords. He never plays anything the same, and he's so fast and fluid and funny. And we saw him the other night, 2 nights ago, at the Baked Potato over there in Studio City. This room is, he was telling me it was big as a classroom. I'm saying, no, it's not. It's got to be bigger than that. And we walk in, oh my God, this place is small.
Tiny.
And we got to see him. We were close enough to touch him when he was playing. It was so fun.
Yeah, it was.
Cool.
It was packed with musical royalty. Chad Wackerman was there, the drummer from Frank Zappa and Al Holdsworth. Jimmy Johnson was on bass with Mike. Pete Thorne showed up. Of course, John Shanks. Just
Mark Dunn was there.
Yeah, it was a great night, and when you make it to the States, you got to go see a show at the Baked Potato.
Oh, I'd love to. You guys have the best bar scene in the planet and club scene in the planet, and really envious of it. I feel like as though there are parts of the States where you can go into, to your point, a place that's no bigger than a hole in the wall, and you can see the best musicians you've ever seen in your life for a couple of hours, and you don't even know their bloody names. They're probably played on all of these killer albums with artists that you just mentioned.
Yeah, Landau's discography is dumb. Like, it's thousands of songs, and that's not hyperbolic. That's true. So he's one of my favorites. And Dave and Tracy and my much better half, Chrissy, we all were there. You're literally packed in like sardines, but it's so well worth it. And the place only
sardines soaking in wine.
The place only serves baked potatoes for food. So you order baked potato is the base of, like, you can get a baked potato with chicken or baked potato, but it's just funny, and it's been there forever. It is a legendary venue, and I aspire to play there hopefully in the next year or two.
Oh, killer! Well, I'll try and get over there when you guys are playing in there. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm going on the 70,000 tons of metal thing next year, so that leaves from Miami at the end of January and cruises through the first bit of February. So 4 or 5 days or what have you.
Who's on the lineup?
I haven't released it yet, but it's all hardcore, heavy stuff. But it just, as if I'd travel that far and not try and go to other parts of the United States. I've been there a couple of times before, but that'll be a good opportunity for me to maybe go over to California and see what's going on over there as well. But just time. It's all time permitting. You know how it is. I thought I'd go on this 70,000 thing as part of the media contingent there, just because it's something fairly interesting to do. And I'm not a huge cruise fan, I've got to say, because there's only 2 things to do on bloody cruises, which is drink and gamble. And and you just get bored. They're like RSL clubs over here. They're not that interesting overall, to be honest with you. But
but the show lineup on those is like, it's music all day long. You can catch everybody. It's kind of cool that way. So
it's Vegas on a boat, right?
Yeah,
pretty much, mate. Exactly. Yeah. I look at it as an opportunity to just catch up and hang out with some of the artists, sort of a bit like with Dave, who we've gotten to know over the last few 12 months or whatever it's been. You end up getting to speak to people quite a bit, like Blitz from Overkill, these sorts of people, and like our conversation here, mate. You can take when someone's mature, meaning that they've lived life, but they've also lived a good life too. Man, the conversations are so good. You just think, Jesus, let's catch up and have a beer at some point.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like with somebody, it's all of a sudden that person becomes magically real. Totally. It's not some. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I do. Well, Landau, I wanted to throw this in real quick. I want to call him Martin. It's Michael Landau. He finished a song up, and there was a quiet part, and we were sitting 2 feet from him, and I said, "Michael, can you play a bar chord?" I was messing with him because he was playing everything but bar chords.
Yeah.
And he
did it kind of out to me.
And he smiled and he went back into his next riff. So funny.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, those guys are interesting. Yeah.
And he's amazing. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I
liked it a lot. Yeah. Dave sent it through, and I had it on in the car, and I actually listened to it last night. And I just, here's an aspect of it that I enjoyed, and I had to listen to it a couple of times before this aspect of it became more apparent. But the soul, blues, and gospel aspect of it, because it's a bit of a shred masterpiece, but you've also got this other thing going on, and I think where the genesis of that might have been, you mentioned it at the beginning of our chat, was Bee Gees.
Yeah, they're kind of one of my hidden influences, like, I'm kind of divulging, some things that with you that people wouldn't reconcile, but they were so good. It's hard, and they were part of the soundtrack of my childhood. So it's intrinsic to my musical DNA at this point. At some point, everything you've ever heard is an influence, but the stuff you've listened to the most is what sticks. So they've stuck the longest, I think.
Yeah.
Which is hard. And when you think about how I play, and I talk about the Bee Gees being a big influence, it's like, this guy's full of shit. But when you hear how their songwriting was, and just the creativity, and my producer on this record is Andrew Coleman, and he's a 3-time Grammy Award winner. Recorded with Justin Timberlake. He's back, one of his Grammys is with JT, and everybody. So he's worked with everybody.
Madonna, no doubt.
Yeah, everybody. And Justin Timberlake talks about how the Bee Gees were an influence on him, which is obviously a lot more relatable than if you listen to my record and say, how do you draw that line? But I think they were a pervasive influence, and I think there's a lot of if-then statements or questions you could say, but you got to wonder what they would have been if the Beatles were never around. And I'm not saying they were better. I'm just saying, like, they were occupying that same time and space. And the comparisons almost made the Bee Gees kind of second class-ish, if you will. And the irony being that they made that movie, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, with Peter Frampton. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Check it out.
Awesome. It was terrible. Yeah. And, but I mean, that's just, their harmonies and whatnot are just, and how they created songs and where they drew inspiration from. And I mean, Barry Gibb wrote a song for Otis Redding, and then Otis Redding passed away before he could record it. So it wound up being a #1 hit for the Bee Gees. I mean, that's real rhythm and blues. That's not just, I started a joke. It's not just that. Those guys were vast. And so, you marry that with the love of me that I have for electric guitar, like Eddie Van Halen and Eric Johnson, and you wind up getting, I like to think, interesting juxtapositions musically. Somebody might hear my record and not understand why I would want to work with Dave, because those worlds are not the same. But my influences and my love for music is vast. It's not just about that.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are clearly mates too. But just on the Bee Gees too, they're actually from my part of the world here. They've got something called Bee Gees Lane at Redcliffe, which is about 50 kilometres away or thereabouts. They were British who migrated out here when they were like 2 or 3 or 4 or what have you, and just their first couple of records were released from Brisbane. So
right,
their sound, you sort of get some insight into their sound, because around here back in those days, mate, there was nothing else to do except basically play football, play rugby league, or be a stockman, this sort of thing, work on the land or perform. And and they were performing basically for football players and bloody stockmen and farmers and this sort of thing. And here's the thing, you got to get it right, otherwise they'll tell you to piss off. And because they're a family and they were basically living where they were living, Crib Island. It's no longer. It's now buried underneath the airport. But that,
really?
that part of, it's gone now. They reclaimed the land and built up around it or what have you, and put the airport there. And it's been interesting that. But still, Redcliffe, if you're ever in this part of the world, check out Bee Gees Walk or Bee Gees Lane. I think it is. Barry Gibb opened it up. The surviving, I think it's Barry, isn't it? That's the surviving member.
He lives in Miami.
Yeah. Well, he go on YouTube. You can see all this stuff and check it out. It's very interesting. It goes fairly deep, and I think there's a few more things around that part of the world. But
his son Stephen played with Zach Wild in Black Label Society on bass.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Oh, that's right too. Yes. Yeah, I should have asked Zach about that. Yeah, Zach's played with a bunch of people. I think he's played with Hank Williams 3 too, hasn't he?
Zach is a monster. He's funny, and he's great.
Good guy.
And
yeah.
If I'm coming out to Australia, you're going to know, brother.
Oh, look, I've been threatening, I think, to bring Dave out here, mate. So we've got to put you on the bill too.
We can arrange it.
It's There's a bit of a cottage industry of bringing out artists from the United States and Europe to Australia at the moment. The issue over here is venues. We don't have a lot of them. Through, the COVID thing's obliterated everything, and the few venues that survived are basically the worst ones.
Do you have one called the Baked Shrimp?
Baked shrimp, okay.
Yeah.
The Barbie shrimp, not the baked potato.
Well, we got the baked
shrimp.
potato. Maybe we have a little
The
baked
Barbie
shrimp
shrimp.
over there.
Yeah.
But Vinny,
I'm here all night.
Vinny and I was.
Yeah.
I'll come over there and play wherever. If it's if they want to hear my music, I'll set up in a fast food place. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to open up a venue, but unfortunately, the few people that I've spoken to that have opened up a venue, and I suppose it's a positive thing in this way, I'm saving my money because they've given me very strong advice not to do it because it's basically a black hole for your money. And
was Mark Alexander one of them?
What's that?
Was Mark Alexander one of the people who told you not to open one?
Well, I've spoken to Mark a couple of times, as you're probably aware. No, he wasn't one of the guys. Plus, he's in Sydney, and Sydney's got 7 million people in it or something like that. So you can probably eke out a bloody existence there if you market it correctly. Up here, we've got something like less than half those numbers, and we're a lot more spread out. So I think the one entertainment. Yeah, well, the one entertainment precinct we've got is pretty much saturated. So, yeah, it just, this is, we talk about, Mark, finding your own level in this business. I think I found mine, and it's with this, having conversations and the like. It's as much as I'd love to open up a venue, it probably won't happen.
Well, maybe one day there'll be the Scars and Guitars Music Festival somewhere.
Yeah. It's a good idea. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think so.
That's a great name.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I don't know whether I've told this story. I might have mentioned it a few times deep into the past on the show, but I was actually, the reason why it's called Scars and Guitars, so the guitars bit is obvious, but the scars was actually to do with athletes because I love sport too, you see. So I was going to try to interview not prominent, but on the level that I'm having conversations with musicians, the equivalent of athletes. So, but it just never ever happened. I got so many opportunities to talk to musicians. I think that the first person I ever spoke to for the show was Vinny Appice. So it sort of showed you where I was going. Yeah, that was sort of the level straight away, boom, right there. And then within 12 months, it was just other people like him.
Have you seen the Dio documentary?
Not yet. It's on my list to watch, though, actually. Yeah,
oh, my God. I had no idea. I sat there in amazement. Me and Chrissy just watched that, and I was looking at her just like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I won't give anything away. You probably know more about him than I did watching that doc, but it's really well done.
Yeah, Dio was an interesting guy because he was beloved by fans, and I don't know whether this comes across. I'm yet to watch the documentary, obviously, but
it does. It does.
But the musicians he worked with weren't such a big fan of him a lot of the time. So Vivian Campbell, especially, has long been on the record about his fractious relationship with Dio. So
you know what it always boils down to, though? The only thing that screws up relationships is this.
Yeah.
And that's what that boiled down to. That's the way it came across. And I think it was fairly represented, but it's, Dio was never lacking in having great players, and obviously Vivian wound up in a great place pursuant to that gig. He wouldn't be where he is now without Dio. So I look at it like that, But.
No, very true. Yeah, it's clashes of personalities and the like. But yeah, and you bang on point there about the financials. I suppose it doesn't matter what genre you're playing, and it's very prominent when it comes to the extreme metal genre because they're not earning much money as a unit overall. So when you get these musicians who are touring the world and they're seeing all the great sites, they come back and they've got a credit card debt. Go back home and they've got a credit card debt, so they get very disenfranchised.
Yeah. Yep, ain't no free lunch in this business.
No more per diem from Atlantic Records.
Do you have any points of interest or notes about the individual the stuff you heard on the record that you wanted to talk about? Or
well, I think I tend to listen to things and listen to them as a unit. And just being busy and working away and having kids and all the rest of it, I have things on in the background. And the measure of an album seems for me to be, whether or not it cuts through in that environment. Now that's really just about me and my environment here. But
I get that.
The three people that I came up with in terms of your guitar playing were a combination of Vito Bratta from Weiland, who's one of my favorite.
Oh my God, you're my best friend, right?
Oh, wow. It's just brilliant. Yeah, J.K. Lee, who I mentioned, and of course you've mentioned him a couple of times. Van Halen, definitely hear the Van Halen there, but in no way did I want to allow do I want the listener to assume that you're just copying because you're a shredder, that you're just going in that part of the musical world because you think you want to show off or what have you. It's very soulful. I love the blues aspect of it, but the other thing that we've touched on was the gospel side of it too. So it's the sort of music that whilst I'm getting the kids organised for school or I'm in the car and I just want to be taken somewhere else, it's the sort of music I can see. Now, Dave sent it to me a while ago, but I've only been listening to it in preparation for our chat, to be honest with you. But it's the sort of music that I can see myself listening to well after what I call the interview cycle is finished. So please take that as much of a compliment as I can offer.
No, thank you. I wasn't fishing for compliments at all. I appreciate the proper influences that you're noting as well. I'm actually just kind of speechless at the compliment you gave me on that. So I appreciate that. And Vito Bratta,
you can tell he's not lying.
Right? I mean, that's cool.
And he's serious. He's very humble and Vito Bratta to me is like that. Like, we need him back,
Oh, I'd love to have him back.
Yeah, it's just but I don't know if you know about him or not. And obviously, we're not here to talk about everybody else, but he kind of dipped out of the scene to take care of his sick parents.
Yeah.
So that's good for him. But I hope he decides to get out there and get real with some guitar music one day because he's a fantastic musician.
Well, here's a theory, Mark. I've read just about everything I think you can read about him in terms of where he's at and his interviews with Eddie Trunk and Eddie Trunk talking about him, of course, because he's good mates with him. But I've been with a few musicians over the years who once were beyond great, but they lose it. I don't know why they lose it. Great singers, great drummers. I've played with them, say, 15 years ago, and then 15 years later, I play with them, or 10 years later, and I'm like, what the hell's happened? Life has just taken them in a different direction. Now, I just call it intuition or call it what you will. Now, I don't think he probably lost it in the sense that he can't play the guitar, but I mean, he was really the guy, wasn't he? When you talk about an era of the Van Halen clones and the like, you had
my God,
George Lynch, Red Beach, Vito Bratta. Vito Bratta is probably the top of that pile, which is basically that great era of the greatest guitarist we may ever hear as a cohort. And he may have lost it. That's what
maybe. I mean, and that would be sad. But I mean, when you listen to Pride, if they remixed that today and took away some of the reverb on all this stuff, which was indicative of the '80s mixes, but that his playing on that record is lights out. It's unreal. Like I could listen. No disrespect to Mike Tramp, but I could listen to that album without vocals. It's a wonderful album. The music is intensely well written and executed, and he can play that shit live. He did a wonderful job. So I have fond memories of listening to Pride. That was the name of that record, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It was Big Game and Pride, and I can't remember the main attraction. That was the other one. But Pride was. I mean, the songs on Pride beat everything else in their catalog hands down.
Yeah, and you have your whole life to write your first record, so it's kind of
spot on. Yeah. But they
It's the best dated Planet Tree, though.
Yeah, it was the best dated Planet Tree today. Yeah. And I don't know if Dave told you about how we connected, but I got to see Talk Show when I was in my 20s back in '97, and I went to see them open for the Foo Fighters in my hometown. And it was at the football stadium at Old Dominion University. And I didn't even stay for Foo Fighters.
I don't blame you.
Well, I mean, back then too, they weren't the Foo Fighters that they are now as far as the songs. Like, it wasn't hitting on my what I wanted to hear. I love Dave Grohl, whatever, I think he's a great songwriter, prolific, fantastic musician. But I thought this record, when I heard it, I'm like, who is that guy? And I knew what was going on with Weiland, and I was sympathetic to the guys in Stone Temple Pilots for that. But I had not seen STP live yet, and I took the time to go down there that day and see the set. And I had a mutual friend that knew the DeLeo brothers out in LA. So after their set, me and my friend Mike Doyle, who's another fantastic guitar player and loves the talk show record, I said, I'm going to go by the buses and see if I can talk to Robert, because I had a gig that night and I just wanted to see if they were still in town. I was going to invite him out and have a good time. And so Robert came around and Dave came around. I met him. Of course, David doesn't remember this, but I remember everything like it was last week. And then back in October, Dave Coutts' music post came up on a Facebook feed. And it was posted by someone else, but I just decided to basically recount the story I just told you and say how much I love the record and how it was a hidden gem of the 90s. And I get this inbox on Facebook later on. I get 3 of them. And it's from Long Beach Leftovers. It says, hey, Mark, I just want to say thanks for the kind words on the Facebook post. I just figured I'd do it in a message as opposed to sending it or doing the thread. And the next one is like, looks like you play big stages. And then the third was like, holy shit, dude, you sure? And I'm like, I see all 3 at one time. I'm like, is this Dave? And he says, immediately answers back. He says, yeah, or yep. And I'm like, bro, I am going to wear you out. I started just laying him out. I went into fanboy mode so hard. I was showing Chrissy the text. I was like, he just texted me back. I was just starstruck, And then I think the hang happened instantaneously. And it took about a week and a half before I asked him. I said, you interested in maybe working together on some stuff, And my drummer that's on the record, Trip Johnson, huge talk show fan, love that record as much as I do. And he's like, see if he wants to do an EP. So, we were just wrapping this up. We were just wrapping up this record. It had been mixed. John Cuniberti mastered this, by the way, for the guitar heads out there. He's Satriani's guy.
Okay.
And he had a lot of to work with Andrew and also Tom Gwaltney's studio. Tom helped engineer a little bit. And to work with Andrew and John Cuniberti and have 2 Grammy Award winners work on my project was humbling because they both loved what we were doing, So that was cool. But anyhow, we're finishing this up and I'm starting to think about how I'm going to promote it and what I'm going to do to start writing the next one, and which I've already got tunes for. And this is a nice break from being in this realm to be writing songs with Dave and to be working on a record with one of my favorite singers of all time. So it's pretty cool, kind of surreal.
But we're just calling it a break for now.
Well, I just want to make the other singer in my band jealous.
Right?
But I don't think the label's going to be in a hurry to get him back. So
is this Dave? Is this something you're talking about with Mark, or are you going to do this separately?
The new stuff.
But with Golden Robot, I should say. Sorry, the 2 Marks. So yeah.
I haven't spoken to Golden Robot in probably over 6 months.
Oh shit! Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
We're pretty much. I think we're over. Yeah.
Yeah,
May,
well, I think that's
May. Contract's done in May, and I only signed for 2 songs to see how it would work out. I gave him 3, and we're good. I'm just gonna move on.
So, Miss California, you're going to delay the release of that?
I might have said something else to you, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Look, I'm just so. Occasionally, after I don't know how long ago it was now, but occasionally I'd exchange a text with him. But no, I haven't had a conversation with him of any deep or meaningful matter. In some time.
And then my record. See what he says about my record.
Did you talk to him about having that released? Did you?
No, but he's welcome to reach out to me. Maybe we can have a golden reboot.
Damn.
But no, Dave and I, Dave and I are working on, and Trip, and also Andrew Coleman's involved, my producer from this record that has produced everybody, worked with everybody. And David was very complimentary. I was just excited to be talking to one of my favorite singers. So I sent him an unreleased version of this, obviously. It had just been mastered. And I actually sent it to him, like, in the sense of, what do you think of the levels? And, an ear that hadn't heard it, an ear that wasn't there for the recording, a fresh set of ears for this body of work to that I would respect and say, yeah, this or that, And I think the first thing he said to me the day after I sent him is this really you? Which was inadvertently a compliment, And so, that aspect of us talking. And then I can't remember what the first thing you sent me was, but we started doing FaceTime sessions because we're 3 hours apart time-wise, right? And we've got 7 or 8 ideas now, eight tunes in various states of arrangement and whatnot. And I think it's going to be a hell of a release, So
we're also going to do a couple of covers.
Yeah, we're doing some remakes.
So we're looking at 10 songs.
Yeah.
If we can put it all together and put it on some vinyls, whatever you call it.
Dave, is this an opportunity for you to revisit some of that stuff from Talk Show, like Hello, Hello? Because that's a song that deserves to live a life beyond 1997 and 1998.
You mean re-release it?
Yeah, why not? Here you go, planting the seed. Why don't you guys do that?
I'm all about it. I like moving forward. There's never any bug splatter on the rearview mirror. But, when we play live, we've already agreed that we're going to do some talk show songs.
I might have to take some royalties, but I'd do it. I don't care.
Well, my point earlier about that being the talk show album maybe being revisited or remastered or whatever, I think that's probably going to be something that is inevitable by virtue of the work that we're doing.
I'm so excited about this new songs that I don't even think about what I've done in the past. I like going forward anyway. And, it might be fun to throw.
Still one of my favorite records, though, man. I get to be fanboy with him on some shit when he shows me like how he. Well, and I didn't know that he wrote that because it's such I just was under the assumption that Robert and Dean had written that. But when he told me that, I came downstairs from our session. It was like midnight. Chris was asleep on the couch. I'm like, check this out. But so I think these songs and the covers are gonna be modern versions of the stuff that Dave's had in his head probably for a long time.
Yeah, as a part two to your songwriting on the album there, Dave would be great.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I apologize for that, but some of the stuff is pre-talk show old that I put into there, but some of it's brand new, and a lot of it's brand new. So,
and some of the riffs on Top Gear. Yeah, the tribute to Eddie, the second track on the record that's obviously Unchained. I wrote that when I was 19. These are riffs that have been
cool.
And I wrote the riff, not the whole song, but the good stuff sticks with you.
Oh, it does. The good stuff's just waiting for an opportunity to be released, isn't it? And it might not have been. Yeah, it's just not 30 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever it might have been, and you've got to go, hang on, and just the right moment with the right musicians to help bring it to life.
And and a producer that has the same vision and doesn't want to get in the way. He wants to manifest it. And Andrew was like that for me on this record. I can't thank him enough for, contributing his time because when you have 3 Grammys on your mantle, you don't need to work with Mark Dunn. You know what I mean? Right now, anyway, in my career, maybe in a couple of years that'll be different. I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. So.
Yeah, I know, but sometimes the things that are successful are an individual's least, not important work, but they're the work that they're least fond of, if you like. Whereas they're working with people like you, a real musician. That's what makes the creative juices and the fact that you're actually doing it that's what inspires the synapses. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
why these guys do that.
I like the way you put that. That's a good way to put that.
Yeah, I was going to mention something like that, but I better not. You do it a lot professionally.
He just sounds cooler saying that shit. Yeah, it's,
I try. Yeah, that's cool. And Dave, what's going on with Miss California, Dave?
What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on with that song? Because that's not released yet, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
It's got about 6,000 views, which is better than the other ones I put out.
Yeah, but you sent me 2 or 3 other songs which are all of a similar quality. So are these being rolled into the sessions that you're working on with Mark?
No,
but they might get played live.
Yeah. So what I'm working on with him is all new, brand new stuff.
Yeah, it's all new, organic. And Dave sneezes and 3 songs come out of his nose. I mean, like, he's one of the most prolific guys. I had to ask myself one day, I was like, is he really that prolific, or is this just shit that's been lingering around that he decides to show me? And it's probably a little bit of both, because we're both idea guys. That's often wonderfully productive, but can also, detriment a writing process. But everything gets tried. Everything gets tracked. Everything gets tried. There are probably 30 versions of the song that we've been screwing around with while I've been out here that we've shared amongst the 4 of us in the group, so to speak.
I think I sent it to you. I think I sent you a DM.
Yeah, you sent me a few, but they're not titled. So, and I can't download them out of the app, the Facebook app. So when I'm listening to them, I've got to listen to them in that environment. But they're all of the same quality of the stuff that you've already released. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear. Obviously, I haven't heard anything yet that I might have heard snippets, I suppose, but that you and Mark are working on. But it'll be interesting to hear how you're marrying up and how your creative muse, if you like, is, say, separating what you do for your solo stuff and then for the stuff that ends up being in with the project you're working on with Mark.
I am all about giving you a sample right now if you want to hear something.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to hear some?
Yeah, for sure.
2, 3.
Don't tell me your life story. I gotta remember the words. Let's do that again. Don't tell me your life story. How do you feel today? Don't wanna hear the guts and glory. I'm not listening anyway. Might be nice to see you smile once in a while. I'd like to see you down. Keep going. Say hello, don't you know? Whatever. Look for open spaces, see some smiling faces, blue skies and open eyes, better things to realize. Someday I hope to make it. Don't let the bad guys take it. I'd love to make it someplace beautiful the rest of my life.
Something like that.
That's awesome. And I have heard that one. Yeah, that's one of the ones he's in through.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. I like it too.
Oh, I love it. It's got there's this, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like those suspended chord structures, if you like, if I'm wrong on a technical level there, but it's definitely got that talk show vibe.
He's a chord snob, and he just doesn't know what he's doing. So, like, he plays something, he'll show it to me on the FaceTime. when I'm back on the East Coast. I'm like, oh, that's a such and such and such and such. He goes, well, it's this. And I'm like, okay, but it's funny because his musical intuition is what's more important. And I think that about anybody. It's more important to just be able to play it as opposed to talk about it, what it is, because sometimes I think there's a level of ignorance that actually is bliss when it comes to music. He doesn't need to know the names of the chords. He just comes up with the shit. And I think, yeah, that's cool. And I'm the one that has to categorize it for my own self. You know what I mean? So I think that his ability to create the sounds that he hears in his head under the neck is intuitive. And he's a much better guitar player than I would have ever thought. And people don't know that he can play his ass off.
Why, thank you. I can play rhythm. I can play.
Everything is rhythm. Everything is rhythm. Mm-hmm. Everything is rhythm. Everything starts with rhythm. You know,
it does.
In fact, rhythm is so important. What song is this not, Andrew?
Leonard.
And the only reason you know it's Sweet Home Alabama is because of the rhythm.
The rhythm, Gotcha. Yeah, it's very true. We were talking the other night about Victor Wooten was saying something similar. He was playing all of the wrong notes in a scale for a song that was similar to that, one of his compositions maybe. But it had groove, it had funk, it had everything that you want to hear out of something that he does. And he's playing in a technical sense all of the wrong notes. So, yeah, you just got to follow your muse. But it's the other point too between the two of you. You're clearly on the same musical language. There you go.
Yes, that's right. Victor grew up, his whole family grew up 2 cities over from me.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
His aunt used to do my taxes when I was in my 20s.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He can play his ass off, that guy.
Oh, that whole family is prodigious. I mean, they're all monsters and, just fantastic. And Joe Wooten has been with Steve Miller, or no, Joe Wooten's been with Steve Miller now for like 25 years on keys.
Okay.
Love that, man.
Yeah. So, there's some interesting players that have come out of Virginia, So
when I was at university, there was a lot of Americans, people from the United States specifically at uni, and there was a few from Virginia. There.
Really?
Yeah, I went to Bond, which is I wouldn't say it models itself on the American institutions, but it's got some sort of a relationship, if you like, with a lot of the American institutions, because a lot will come over for a semester. And some of the classes I was in, I'd be the only Australian in the class.
Really?
Yeah. So mainly some from California, but mainly from the East Coast, I noticed.
Interesting. California's closer. So it's really
yeah. It's that was sorry, what was that?
It's all about the money. There's probably a lot more richer English kids getting sent over there to school in California.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. So definitely the Northeast there, Connecticut, New England, that sort of thing. I noticed, but definitely, I remember a couple of people were from Virginia Tech. I think it is, isn't it? Isn't that the
that's out in the western part of the state of Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech.
I thought you also mentioned England.
Oh no, New England.
Oh, gotcha.
Connecticut.
There's more money out on the East Coast anyway, for sure.
You think?
Old money, yeah.
Old money, yeah, for sure.
Old money, yeah. A bit like Sydney and Melbourne compared to where I'm from, or living around here too. Yeah, gotcha.
Did you take music when you went to college? What'd you take?
Oh, journalism. Yeah, so I was.
Really?
I did journalism and. But music, no, I've never studied music. Of course, I did it through school because you had to. You had no choice. But I'm not an academic with regards to my approach to playing. Matter of fact, I think I certainly wasn't discouraged when I was coming through. But when you're a young kid and they're forcing you to learn classical music and stuff, and instead you're listening to Living Colour, Faith No More, and Megadeth and this sort of thing, it's really hard to reconcile the two at time. And it's it's something that they always told me was a phase I never grew out of. So here I am.
Yeah, there's nothing that's a phase about the album Vivid from Living Colour. That's an amazing record.
No,
I think the fact, Andrew, that as a journalist and someone who went to journalism school, you're actually doing journalism. Nobody does that anymore.
No, it's a tough one, mate, on that point. We've had a number of conversations. Yeah.
Propaganda in, propaganda out. So good for you.
Yeah, and look, I did work in news media too, as I might have shared with you, Dave. But I just couldn't. I can't do it. It's ridiculous. I still work as a journalist, but I work for. Funnily enough, I work for the church. I work for a version of the Presbyterian Church here in Australia as a journalist and a content creator, doing their websites. And as a journalist, you got to do everything from the websites to the videos to the podcasts to writing the articles to whatever else it might be. Communications of any type. You're just a communicator, a professional communicator at the end of the day. And
that's your job. That's your full-time job.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what we're doing. How's your passion?
Correct. Spot on. Nailed it. Yeah. Yeah. This is. Oh yeah. No, you get a check occasionally from Google or whatever it might be for doing this, but you wouldn't. It's only enough to buy a couple of rounds. That's all it is. But you wouldn't. God Almighty, you wouldn't. I mean, you guys are on a bit of a different level, being a bit more prominent, but as a podcaster and the like, it's podcaster and someone who writes articles and the like, I don't even bother taking money for it. I've had people offer me money, but what I do like doing, just to Dave's point a moment ago, is being independent and having the conversations that I want to have. But I tell you what, it doesn't stop me from having. I've had one episode banned on YouTube, the conversation with John Joseph from Chromags.
Really? Why?
Well, if and if you've got some background and some insight in John Joseph, he just doesn't take any shit from anybody. So, of course, we're living through the era of big tech, big pharma, a lot of left-wing ideologies at the moment, and he sees right through it and he stands up against it. And, of course, big tech doesn't want you to do that, so they ban your conversation from the platforms. And I'm very, very grateful for Spotify.
Yeah.
Because Spotify doesn't – so they will put a disclaimer on things, but they won't ban things. They won't pull things down. And, I mean, my audience on YouTube dwarfs everything else. So if I get pulled from YouTube, I'll lose my reach.
What about Rumble?
Oh, they're not there yet, mate. Odyssey and Rumble and all of that stuff. It's all really clunky.
Really?
If I don't know.
That's the term that I use. I use that same term, clunky.
It's just clunky. And there's all of these they're adjacent, aren't they, to the big tech platforms on Google and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. But let's face it, if you're not on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, this sort of thing, you're basically just camping. You don't reach an audience of people who would otherwise not hear you. With Odyssey and Rumble and those things, you're getting people who are already invested. So you can do that too, but it's not quite at a point yet where we haven't democratized big tech yet, and that'll hopefully come. And you know why I think that'll come? Because of what ChatGPT is doing. Because ChatGPT is turning everybody who couldn't write into a bloody scholar.
Yeah, that's a little alarming.
Is that the AI guy?
It's one of them.
Spot on. Yeah.
And ChatGPT will also just make shit up. Like you ask it to write a history of the Presbyterian Church, and it'll lay out whatever it can web crawl. Then it in one example, it offered up books to read with authors' names, and I'm just using Presbyterian Church. I can't remember what this one actually was, but this is a real thing that happened.
Sure, yeah.
And the books were just made up, and the authors' names are just made up. Like it's
basically, hey, you don't have to read. I'll be your brain.
Exactly. It's just kind of nuts. It's like
it's
already learned how to lie. It's learned how to lie. How about that? That's what it's learned how to do.
But big tech and big tech and all of these organizations and these businesses and these platforms that have sprung up courtesy of smartphone usage, right? They already lie, and they're already so. The thing about being a journalist is you want to plug into, so what is news? Well, the thing is news by its definition, I suppose, doesn't have one anymore, because anything is news. Okay. We used to talk about whether it's relevant, whether it's time bound, whether it's worthy of public consumption, this sort of thing. Nowadays, you're in an era where Hunter Biden's laptop isn't newsworthy. So,
obviously it is. It's only being said that it's not newsworthy.
This is what I'm saying. But this is a story that potentially could have blown up the candidacy of Biden. But it's not newsworthy because big tech doesn't want people to know, because, of course, they wouldn't vote for the guy because he's a bloody crim. But this is the era that we're living in at the moment, and it's really up to the individual to make up their own mind. But I'm afraid, unfortunately, I think people are they're sleepwalking into this almost dystopian Soylent Green future.
Sleepwalking into suicide.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't even, I try not to even have these discussions with people from a political standpoint. It's just like this is real, this is not standpoint. And the level of obfuscation on so many other topics is just insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Oh, it's
2 equals 4. It's not 5. 2 plus 2 equals 4.
No, and music is an outlet that I think is going to become more and more relevant and important to people, because we're living through this era of critical race theory, the destruction of science, and the name of progressive ideology, i.e. men are women, identity politics, reverse racism, and overall just this Marxist ideology that's underpinning so many of these institutionalized big tech platforms. And people are asking, I find more and more people are starting to ask, is there a way out of this? So there's a lot of people that are conscious to it, and it doesn't matter what background you're from. You can be black or white, and from any religious or cultural background, So I find, especially in Australia, if you watch Sky News, some of the most prominent people aren't even, they're from places, they're born in places like Iran, but they migrated as a kid out here. So they value the democracy that we've got and they want to protect it.
And they're looking around going, what the hell happened during COVID? What is this shit?
I'd love to have you over for a Bud Light sometime.
Yeah. No, I'd accept that invitation, by the way, but maybe not Bud Light. Maybe we'd go for, I don't know, some other independent brewery. There you go.
Or get the oil can with the kangaroo lined up with the spout. You're at Foster's.
Foster's an interesting one, yeah.
How are your kids and your wife?
Yeah, they're going well. Yeah, I mean, on that front, life is great. You can't complain, but it's the bigger picture, isn't it, that we look at and we think. So on an individual basis, honestly, things couldn't be better. Everything's great. The kids are healthy and money's coming in, and there's so many opportunities. I get to do this. This is, one of the things that I always wanted to do, one of my dreams, if you like, talking to great artists and musicians. But it's not hard to sort of look out the window occasionally and think, Jesus Christ, can't we just collectively get our stuff together instead of this grab for power, which I think is really what it's about.
100%. I would tell you that COVID was opportune. Now, people got sick and died from it, but at the same time, there was a little bit of let's see what we can get away with. You know what I mean? Which should be alarming to everyone. The truth is coming out, fortunately, about how stuff was wittingly and against science, wittingly imposed upon the society of the world, in different ways in different countries. But here I sit in California, and the level of duplicitous behavior from the Politburo, if you will, the politicians, and what they imputed upon the working restaurant owners and things like this were just insane. Like, what's the point? What are you doing? When you have, a governor eating a $5,000 dinner at the French Laundry. Meanwhile, one of the restaurant owners in Anaheim has to set up, in the parking lot, and we learn history for a reason. We know about the French Revolution for a reason, and it's that kind of shit that should piss everybody off, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever you are in Australia. It's just, there's no sense behind that, and I speak as a free person tethered to no party other than common sense and freedom.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm as frustrated with both sides of the aisle. We have similar setup over here. We have a left and right wing party. They're just not they're not quite as the similar vibe, if you like, but they're a bit more centrist still. So our left-wing Prime Minister was interviewed by Piers Morgan, who you probably know who Piers Morgan is recently because he's over in the UK for the coronation of our new head of state, King Charles, because we still have part of the monarchy, the Commonwealth. But he was asked by Piers Morgan to describe what a woman is, and he didn't subvert the question. He said it's an adult female.
Yeah. Oh,
but he's a left-wing guy. So that's interesting. So you've still got some common sense in some of those mainstream left-wing parties where they're not completely drinking the bloody, the bullshit juice or whatever.
Also, that guy's had.
You better be careful when he starts talking about drinking blood there, buddy. You might get turned off.
He's also had the luxury of seeing our new Supreme Court justice dodge the question, literally, in her confirmation hearings. And I think it was you. Didn't the PM of New Zealand just resign, and she went through the same thing and wouldn't answer the question? And there's been some prominent figures that have been posed the question because it's it's kind of there's one way to answer it. Period. End of story.
Shouldn't you be playing Alexa? We have another song called Alexa, and it's kind of talking about what we're talking about.
Oh, right. Alexa's always listening, right?
A little bit of politics in the lyrics on this new stuff.
As there should be. I mean, music has always been a vehicle for cultural awareness and maybe even cultural change. I just want to know when all the cool musicians of the 70s that were, anti-establishment wound up, pimping the establishment in this current time, I mean,
pimping Pfizer.
Why would you want to get Rogan? Why would you want to take your music catalog off Spotify if you don't fire Joe Rogan? I mean, are you shitting me? Come on, Neil. Go ahead. Send me
yeah, exactly. Neil Young's an idiot, and I went on a rant not too long ago about that, and it was a constructive rant, by the way. But I just couldn't believe that he thought that he was bigger than Spotify at this point in time. Like, how out of touch can you possibly be? That if you don't take Joe Rogan down, I'm going to remove my music. Here's the thing, Neil. Fine. Okay. Most of your fans have CDs anyway. Don't stream your stuff. So, or records or whatever it might be. But yeah, I mean, what
he knew that was a hollow gesture on his part because he doesn't own his whole catalog. So he could say it all day long, but he didn't have the power to do it on his own.
Very
music.
true. Yeah.
So,
very true.
It was just a soapbox, and to each their own. I'm not going to disrespect him as an artist, but at the same time, it's like, you're not that self-important, bro. Come on, Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan's by no means a righty, he's not sitting there, espousing the attributes of Donald Trump by any means, but he just keeps it real, and it's also entertainment.
Yeah.
And if people want to listen to someone and you gain information from it, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying thank God for Spotify, because they didn't pull down my episode with John Joseph either. So at the moment, Spotify is the one we can bank on.
Okay.
You can bank on almost anything you want to put out there. You can bank on the fact that Spotify will actually honour that and they won't pull it down. And that's the most important thing, because whether or not people think they're good ideas or bad ideas, all ideas deserve to be dissected at some point, because there's always an audience for every idea, if you like. And it's not up to somebody else to tell us what we can and can't listen to and what's good for as adults, we need to be able to make decisions, okay? It's how we grow. It's how we learn. And I don't need any government, as you guys don't either. You don't need big tech or big pharma or any government or any unelected official, which is another bloody issue, any unelected official from a health department telling us what we can and can't do with ourselves.
Right.
That's why we hit it out.
And the director for the CDC.
Who's that? Who's the CDC director?
Walensky? Yeah, Walensky, something like that.
How about that? Ooh, talk about unelected officials. The guy that runs that junkyard is a freaking terrorist.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, he's the Ethiopian guy. Yeah, he was Somali guy, or whatever he is. Yeah, he's a scumbag, mate.
I'm going to become an unelected official and tell everybody they must listen to Top Gear.
Yeah, there you go. Well, just announce yourself as just go to Davos and be with these World Health Organization psychopaths and these World Economic Forum psychopaths. Oh yeah, and tell us look at it. Maybe
I'll get Greta to wear this T-shirt. I'll get her to wear Greta Thunberg to wear this T-shirt.
Yeah, do that. And because you know how they're forcing us to eat bugs these days and they're calling it micro livestock. Have you heard about that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Micro livestock.
How are the sparkling grasshoppers going? Tracy making a grasshopper.
We're cooking some up right now.
Wonderful. Okay, can I have some barbecue sauce with my fly? Thanks.
Get out there. Have that, some Bud Light.
Oh,
yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say this too. I don't know. I mean, I'll sit here and talk all day, but as this goes out over the podcast ways, I am 100% serious. If somebody wants to bring my music over to Australia, I will come on. If they want to make it right, get up with the right promoter or agents listening, listen to my record.
Yeah,
maybe even tag along.
Oh, it'd be great to do something like that. Yeah. It's it just all comes down to financial viability, and maybe there's a wealthy benefactor out there who just wants the greatest musicians around right now to come into one place, in a really good club around here or what have you, and
sponsors.
I heard Cheap Trick had to stay quarantined in a hotel for 2 weeks before they could go on stage and play. I'm not doing that.
Was that in Australia? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, especially if it was in the state of Victoria. But
Victoria.
I don't think those rules. Yeah, Victoria is very similar to California in terms of its politics. All there's no right wing party in Victoria anymore. That's just all left these days, and they're all coming up here. A lot of when they move up here for the weather anyway, because Victoria's weather is probably similar to New York's or something like that. People in the US, I think that we're all really hot here, but Victoria can be freezing. Get down to zero.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Melbourne. You probably heard of the city of Melbourne. Yeah, that's lovely city. Lot of cultural artifacts there, but my God, is it freezing? Yeah, it's cold.
Well, interesting tidbit about myself. I was born in Iceland.
Oh wow! So you're a military family?
Yeah, my dad. Yeah, my dad was the. I came along way late. My oldest brother was an adult when I was born. But so my dad's second to last duty station was Reykjavik, and I was born off the base in Keflavik. So I have dual citizenship in two different birth certificates. So
that's very interesting. Yeah, there's got to be some astrological influence there, if you like, being born in a very different part of the world. And I've got to say, I speak to a bloke, Smarty, from Iceland quite a bit on Messenger. He's in a band called Petronian, and a bit like what I've done with Dave, we've just sort of continued the conversation well after the fact. And he's a tremendous fella too. So Iceland, they tend to breed him well up there, mate. So you're from good stock.
Yeah, well, I make the joke about there's only two things to do in Iceland, and the first one's drink vodka, and I'm a product of the second thing. So it's all. I have the most unique birth story out of everyone else in my family. But so I can't thank you enough for wanting to take time to talk to me about this record, and also let me brag about my association with David now. And it's just, this album's going to be banging. And some of the things we've talked about from a live standpoint is I think we'll probably perform, obviously, our new works of music, and we'll perform some of this, and we'll perform some old talk show, and even some 10-inch men. So
nice.
When this record gets done, and I think we'll do at least a couple of shows here in the States somewhere. And
we have a lot of things to pick from, really, a lot of platters that we could throw out at least an hour and a half of music right off the bat.
Yeah. And the covers, the remakes that we're going to do, we're going to, I think they're going to be pretty well received. I don't want to let that cat out of the bag yet, but I haven't heard anybody cover these songs, and they're songs that everyone knows. So it's like one of those things, like, hasn't nobody revisited that yet, So
Gents, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap things up because I've got to get the kids up and ready for school. But obviously, I want to thank you very much for your time, and it's always a thrill. But Mark, it's been so great to make your acquaintance. I'm hoping we can continue the conversation after this. And
Zoom hug.
And
it's good to see you again.
I'll need
your. Let's do it again, guys. Let's make this.
This next couple of those recorded. We'll hook up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do that then. I'd love to do that.
We're going to release official singles before we finish the whole project. So there'll be new music coming.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, fantastic.
All right.
Great stuff. All right.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, brothers. Appreciate it. Talk to you again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Catch ya.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. What an awesome chat with two fantastic fellas, Dave Coutts and Mark Dunn. I enjoyed that one. If you liked it, go across to scarsandguitars.com where many more conversations await. And if you like listening, perhaps you like reading, because I've written a book, Scars and Guitars Volume 1, Conversations from the World of Hard Rock, Heavy Metal and Beyond. Click on the link in the banner on that website there and you will be taken to a website, or a marketplace I should say, of your choice. You can download a sample, and if you do complete the purchase, hit me up because I want to thank you in person. There's some more information to come about the book, but before we get to that, I need to bid you a fond farewell. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast. Until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silenos from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot. And
we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.